I was once given the advice to find a question that I was inspired to answer and to build a career or a company around answering it. And it only took me 2 years of university, studying and memorizing facts and regurgitating it on exams to realize that question I wanted to answer. And that was, how do we reinvent this education system? And about 5 years later, I had built a company around doing that. And I'd realized I'd been answering the wrong question. Because in order to reinvent the education system, there was a more important question that needed to be answered first. Let me tell you about my friend Mike and how I came to this realization. Mike and I met at student leadership conferences in Canada. And this is me, that one that looks 12 years old. That was a bit of a late bloomer. And what we all had in common at these events were that we were taking an experience-focused approach to our education. We were stepping outside the classroom walls, and we were building the leadership skills that employers really wanted. And by the time we graduated, nearly every single one of my friends, my student leader friends from these university conferences, had been offered jobs at some of the largest companies in the world, including Mike and myself. Our unique approach to education was working. Mike ended up getting an offer at a Fortune 500 company. I ended up publishing this book to share this experience-focused formula with other students and show them how they could use it to launch a great career. We were definitely winning, fresh out of university. And Mike quickly climbed the ladder, being the smart guy he was, promotion after promotion. He was working his way up the ladder, and then he found himself at the international office, making over $100 an hour at just 27 years old, living a great lifestyle. But then about 3 years later, I got a call from Mike, a call that I'll never forget. And on this call, I asked Mike, how are things at work? And this time he skipped the cliche response, and he decided to be real. And he was angry. And he described to me what his work was really like. And he said, Andrew, I just feel such a lack of purpose in what I'm doing. There's just no meaning in this. And he told me about the sea of beige cubicles at his office, and how this billion-dollar company had a yearly fund budget of just $20 per employee. And he told me how the majority of our student leader friends that attended these same conferences were in the same boat. Many were feeling stuck, some depressed. And he shared with me that one of our friends had recently committed suicide. And I remember feeling so frustrated, upset that, we were told that we were the leaders of tomorrow, bright, charismatic young people, and just to see them get funneled into these careers and see their souls and their lives get just sucked from them, and that passion be diminished. What was with that? And when I took a step back and looked at the world and reflected on this situation, I realized that many of these corporations were the same culprits at creating the environmental issues and the social injustice issues that we're seeing on the planet. I realized that this was not a game worth winning. And what was the point of teaching innovative approaches to education if it was only funneling these young leaders into these very corporations? I was really lost at what the alternative was, though. What do I do? Start telling people to join charities? I'd looked inside a lot of charities, and they were buying their beige cubicles from the same place as these corporations and employing a lot of the same leadership techniques as these big corporations. That wasn't the solution. And I was totally lost for what it was. I'd realized I was answering the wrong question, and that the more important question to answer first was, how do we redefine success? And I really didn't know what the answer was to that question. And that was 2007. Then 2008 hits, and the banks start to fail. The stock markets are crashing, and entire countries then start going bankrupt and being devastated by intensifying earth changes. And I realized there was this Mayan 2012 prophecy that had predicted all this. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a total loss of control, really what it was. It was totally not knowing what to do with my future, feeling paralyzed. So much so that I began to pack this box. And what this box is, it's a survival box. And I had well prepared this, everything from a CV radio to a survival stove that runs on biomass to a portable solar panel. So, you know, the world could collapse as we know it, but I could not live without powering my MacBook Pro. And I was at this point of just total despair, so I took my survival box and I decided to go on a personal retreat to rethink my future and figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I ended up in the jungle of Costa Rica. And there I met a wise, mysterious old man who actually looked like he was 40, but in fact was nearing 80. And he brought me under his wing, and he brought me through 3,000 years of history, leading me on this incredible adventure to help predict what was really in store with the future, following, you know, the sage advice of Sir Winston Churchill that the farther back we look, the farther forward we can see. And what I saw really shocked me. It turns out there's been many moments in history where people thought the world was going to collapse. But in 3,000 years, there's only been 4 major shifts. And the difference between the small cycles and the big cycles was that the big cycles represented a shift in paradigm, where the objectives and the worldview of the civilization changed. And what was fascinating also was that there was a common pattern, that every time there was a shift in these ages, there was a pattern of 4 things that happened. And historians often call these the great ages, or the epochs of civilizations. And these 4 things look like this. Number 1, there was a dominant institution showing signs of corruption and collapse. Number 2, there was a breakthrough in communication technology, like the introduction of alphabetic handwriting or the printing press. And 3, the masses were now becoming more educated and informed about the problems and the possibilities, and they started to rise up and revolt. And then 4, game changers and visionaries emerged, taking a leadership role and charging the way to bring forth a new worldview, using this breakthrough in communication technology to spread their ideologies and worldview in a way that just simply wasn't possible before. And so I started to ask my question, you know, if this has happened through each one of these ages, is this happening right now? And you know, is the dominant institution of our time, the multinational corporation, is it showing signs of corruption and collapse? And it was. You know, it didn't take me too long to find that in 2010 alone, there was $997 billion in corporate fraud reported. Number 2, is there a breakthrough in communication technology? Oh, is there ever? The internet spreading information now at the speed of a click. Was there, you know, an uprising? Were the masses revolting? Well, I discovered this thing called the Occupy movement that you might have heard of. That I found that in one day there was 1,500 simultaneous protests happening all around the world. The masses rising up, protesting against the old game in favor of a new. And were there game changers and visionaries emerging, introducing a new paradigm? And there were. And I discovered this entire movement of people and organizations defining themselves as purpose-driven, not profit-driven. And they were really redefining success. And I realized that this wasn't just the end of an era. This was the beginning of an exciting new game, a new worldview that I could choose to become a part of. I could find a role in. And so I realized that if we were going to redefine success, we needed to shift what we showcased as success. And for decades, we've been showcasing success through lists like the Fortune 500, you know, profiling the companies solely based on how much money they make, and then having young people aspire to work at these companies or build companies like this. We needed to showcase a different definition of success. And I thought, you know, what if there was a list of the world's top purpose-driven companies, the companies that were a part of this movement, that were reinventing the world and redefining the rules of business around fun, fulfillment, and fairness? And I looked for such a list, and I didn't find it, so I decided to create it. And I'd found my role in this new game. It's called the GameChangers 500. But there was one problem. I was a one-man show at the time, living in the jungle of Costa Rica with a survival box. How was I going to find and rate hundreds of companies and create this database? And so I called up Mike, and I asked him if he'd join me. And after years of working in that company, building an incredible salary and a stable career, he said yes, and he joined me, and he came all the way to Costa Rica. And then we recruited 12 students from those same leadership conferences that we used to attend, and we invited them to join us, and they became our first interns of this company. And together we went through at least 20 versions of our evaluation method, and thankfully got a lot of expert feedback, and arrived at a set of 9 common success principles that we found that these game-changing organizations were doing. The new definition of success that they were living by. And we broke these standards into 9 badges, awarding them to companies if they were meeting these different success principles. And we broke the badges into their objectives, how they treat people, and how they treat the planet. And so we found all sorts of cool examples of this. We found their objectives of these organizations were to reinvent, to do something that was different from normal, that stepped outside of the status quo. And we found companies like Grameen Bank in India that they decided that there needed to be a totally new approach to helping countries get out of poverty. And so they decided to loan money to people that had none, had no credit score. And it turns out that it worked, and that they actually enjoy an over 90% payback rate on their loans. Eat your heart out, Bank of America. Caring actually wins. And we found another common objective of these companies was to scale their impact using affiliation, collaboration, and open sourcing models, because it was more important that they grew their impact rather than just grew their revenues. And this great company in Malaysia, MindValley, an exceptional example here, reinventing the publishing industry with a mission to impact the lives of 500 million people by 2050. And they realized that using a conventional business model was just not going to get there. And so they decided to open source their entire platform, giving away their secret sauce to the world. So anybody with an idea that was worth sharing, anybody with a positive message to share with the world, could use their platform and get that message out, scaling their impact. Another common objective we found was these organizations were focused on meeting the mission, not just meeting quarterly earnings and caring about how much money they made. A great example here that was mentioned in the previous talk, Free the Children and Me to We out of Canada. We found that this organization operated as what's known as a hybrid legal model, where they simultaneously ran, and still do, run a for-profit and a not-for-profit. And what they're doing is they're creating a business that's for good, not just for profit, ensuring that they're meeting their mission. They also measure their progress towards their mission like it's a sport. And if you go to their website, you'll see all sorts of numbers highlighting how they're progressing towards meeting that mission. And when we looked at the rules these organizations played by, we saw that how they treated people and how they treated the environment was different from traditional companies. And they treated people well by creating these exceptional work environments that were fun, inspiring, and an evolutionary leap beyond the beige cubicle. And looking inside Google really puts this into perspective. Check this place out. It's like a playground, you know? You got like themed offices, a spa, free gourmet food, you name it. And we found these companies also cared about empowering their employees, realizing that happiness was the new productivity. And Zappos is one of the favorite examples we found here. And check this out. They, when they're interviewing people to work at Zappos, they will offer $2,000 to a new hire if they quit within their first week. They want to ensure that they're only finding people that share their mission, that share the top 10 values, core values that Zappos operates under, and ensuring that they have empowered employees and people who are part of their tribe. And if you look inside Zappos, this is what you see. You know, they're having a lot of fun in the process. And they're a billion-dollar company, a for-profit, but doing good at the same time. And another standard success principle we saw being met was these organizations didn't just care about ensuring their customers were happy or their employees were happy. They realized that success was when everybody won. And Whole Foods, the godfather of organic supermarkets in North America, is one of my favorite examples of this. And we found that they had this local loan producer program where they'll actually give seed financing to local businesses to create products that then Whole Foods will buy and supply. A little bit of a different approach to that type of business. They also had these 5% days where they give away 5% of their gross revenue several days of the year to local charities, really caring and ensuring that everybody won in the process. And we also found a new set of standards in how these organizations treated the environment. And things like earth-friendly offices. And if we look at this company, Tom's Shoes, and Tom's Shoes, they're a great example of a business that's a force for good as well. They give away a pair of shoes to somebody that doesn't have shoes every time you buy a pair of shoes for yourself from Tom's. But when you look inside their offices, this is what you'll find as far as sustainability goes. They've got a whole team called Sustainable Souls, a team of 14 employees and interns who are dedicated to ensuring they've got good recycling practices, they're minimizing their carbon footprint, to repurposing old pairs of shoes. But that's not all. They also go beyond their office, and they go beyond just keeping their office green and actually give back to the planet as well, in a badge that we like to call Replenish the Planet. Because it's not just about minimizing what you take from the planet, it's also about giving back to it and helping it thrive. And then finally, we found this final success principle was that these game-changer organizations, they actually built their products and services with future generations in mind. And they were meeting incredible standards in sustainability. And Method Home is a great example here. And they've got this standard they meet in 40 of their products, cleaning products, called Cradle to Cradle, which basically is a measurement tool that measures how much waste is produced through your product or service. And you only get Cradle to Cradle certification if you meet very specific criteria on how little waste you produce. And so Method, imagine this cleaning product, not only is it all natural ingredients, but this bottle is 100% recyclable or can be composted. Imagine planting this bottle in your garden and watching it integrate back into the earth. Now, imagine doing that with this bottle, not a garden you'd want to be eating out of. And we found that the majority of these companies didn't get all 9 badges. Some definitely were excelling in all 9 areas, but what was interesting is that on average they had about 5, but they had initiatives in all 9 areas. They were united in a common worldview, and that was making them a game changer. And so we wanted to not just create a top 500 list, but we wanted to create a website where we could share these best practices, so we did. And so companies can share their best practices and also learn from other companies in the areas that they're weak. And so if you want to work at one of these companies, you can find this database. And so students aren't just limited to the corporations recruiting from the college campuses, that they can find the purpose-driven companies that are changing the world in an easy way. And for people that want to learn how to get hired by these companies, we created an online career program where you can learn about how to develop your strengths and figure out what your core values are, because that's what these companies really want. They want you to meet their mission and be part of their purpose. And we also made it easy to recommend game changer companies to help scale our impact. So you can recommend a company right on our website, and then we'll send that company a version of our Game Changers DNA test, and we'll evaluate that company on these 9 success principles. And I am thrilled that this year we'll be releasing our first Game Changers 500 list. And I would have never thought a journey that started with a survival box would have ended up like this. And I'm also really excited for what's coming next. One of the things we're doing is we're taking over this amazing 20,000 square foot property in Costa Rica, and we're turning it into a center where these visionaries and game changers can collaborate and unite and really reinvent the world together. Because as Einstein said, the greatest problems we face can't be solved at the same level of thinking that created them. And so why not unite the people who are operating from this new paradigm and put them on solving some of the greatest problems that we face in this world? That's what's coming next. I really feel that we're at an incredible point in history where we're at a point where the game is changing, and we have the opportunity to be part of this new worldview that's birthing. And a new game is being birthed, and it's got a new set of rules and a new set of objectives. It's a game where the objective isn't just a profit at all costs, but to pursue a purpose that inspires you. A game where it's not about treating people as human resources. It's about treating them like human beings and cherishing the planet because it's the only one we got. It's a game where success is when everyone wins. And so the only question left to answer is, what role are you going to play? Thank you very much.